Tonight, the drumbeat of war.
This, of course, has got to do with the tensions in Asia.
We're over the South China Sea, and that is a Chinese fighter.
Competition between the world's superpowers is intensifying.
How close are we to all-out conflict?
The war in Ukraine has entered its second year.
Europe's largest conflict since World War II.
Japan has announced the biggest military build-up since the Second World War. China is making moves in its region, particularly in relation to Taiwan.
On the question of Taiwan, there's no room for compromise.
Now, countries are taking sides in ways we haven't seen for a long time. China has formed a no-limits partnership with Russia. The United States, on the other hand, has teamed up with the UK and
that fellow down under
to form the AUKUS alliance, a three-way partnership of old allies. The announcement of a new nuclear submarine deal between the trio has increased tensions.
We urge the United States, Britain and Australia to abandon the Cold War mentality and zero-sum game.
But is all this necessary? And how real is the risk of war? The strength of a nation's economy usually dictates how much it spends on its military. And China's economy has been booming. In 2023, China's military spending increased to 1.55 trillion yuan, or 338 billion Australian dollars, which is an increase of 7.2% from the year before, but it's still dwarfed by the US's massive 1.23 trillion Australian dollars. With that spend, China wields the largest military with 2.5 million soldiers, sailors and airmen. Its arsenal includes about 3,000 aircraft and more than 300 naval vessels, almost 5,500 army tanks and an additional 7,300 fighting vehicles, along with almost 350 nuclear warheads. Compare that to the United States. It's believed to have almost 1.5 million active troops, more than 13,000 aircraft, 296 combat ships in the Navy, almost 3,000 tanks, and an equivalent number of infantry vehicles, all underpinned by a vast nuclear arsenal.
Competition does not mean conflict. Still, we must have the combat credibility to win if we must fight.
Historically, it's those nuclear warheads that have made the US the most formidable force in the world.
Every single day, our nuclear weapons deter our adversaries, not just from nuclear warfare, but from the kind of conventional warfare that we saw so often in the 20th century.
Even though Australia and the United Kingdom form 2/3 of AUKUS, our military numbers pale in comparison. Whereas China has 2.5 million military personnel, and the US has under 1.5 million, the UK has 158,000, and Australia just 60,000, with plans to expand to 80,000 by 2040. As for our current submarine capacity, the UK has just 10, and Australia has 6 in total so far. None of them are nuclear. But Australia plays an important role, sitting smack bang in the middle of the region. And that's why this new submarine deal is so important. Phase 1 will see US and UK submarines rotate through Australia as early as 2027 to boost defence in the Indo-Pacific. Phase 2 will begin sometime in the 2030s. Australia will buy 3 existing Virginia-class nuclear-powered submarines from the United States, with an option to buy 2 more if needed. They can seek and destroy enemy ships, stay submerged for up to 3 months, and can travel at speeds of 43 kilometres per hour. Spanning 150 metres in length, they can accommodate a crew of 135 people. The Virginia class lasts as long as 33 years and has a life of boat nuclear reactor, meaning it doesn't need refueling. But there are questions about whether these second-hand subs will be good quality.
No one's going to be, foisting off clunkers on good friends and allies.
The next phase is the key one, and will involve a new generation hybrid submarine with a British design and American technology. The design, known as SSN-AUKUS, is still being developed, but it's expected Australia will build its own version in Adelaide, creating thousands of jobs.
What we're building is a capability that only a handful of other countries have. It's going to push the boundaries enormously for Australia in terms of our educated workforce, our industrial capability.
There's also debate about whether the submarines will be effective if a war breaks out.
8 submarines against China, when we get the submarines in 20 years' time, it'll be like throwing a handful of toothpicks at a mountain. A handful of toothpicks at a mountain.
Especially if China continues to spend big. In fact, the 7.2% increase in defence spending by China will outpace their own GDP growth of 5% over the next few years.
If you look at what China's military modernisation plans include, the Chinese are the ones that are escalating this arms race.
China is increasing its nuclear arsenal, building naval bases in Cambodia and signing agreements with the Solomon Islands.
There's no devious intention, no secret plan.
It's built hypersonic missiles and anti-satellite lasers as it becomes increasingly hawkish on Taiwan.
All democracies around the world to look at the situation so that we can rise up and say no to China.
To keep up, the US's Indo-Pacific Command reckons the region will need about $67 billion in new military investment before 2027.
As long as we remain number one, then we will deter the war that people worry about, a great power war between China and the United States.
The huge spend on the new nuclear submarines for Australia might seem like a big deal, but they are barely a drop in the ocean.